All right. Hi, I'm going to bring us all to order. I'm Jess Ambler. I am the director of the Eleanor D. Wilson Museum. Thank you guys for being here this evening. I'm just going to give a quick introduction and hand over the mic. Cece Bell is an author and illustrator of children's books, including the Rabbit and Robot stories, the Sock Monkey series, and Itty Bitty. Bell lives and grew up in Virginia, where she also completed her undergraduate degree at the College of William and Mary. Bell went on to get a graduate degree in illustration and design at Kent State University. Bell has received numerous awards and honors over the course of her career. Her graphic novel memoir, El Defo, received a Newbery Medal in 2015. It also received the Geisel Award, which she has also received for Rabbit and Robot, The Sleepover in 2013, and again in 2020 for Chick and Brain, Smell My Foot. 5 of her books, this is so fun. 5 of her books are Junior Library Guild selections. Bell has been involved with the children's literature program here at Hollins for many years and was the writer in residence for the program in 2022. She has also shown work here at the Wilson Museum in the past, and we were honored to work with her again on an amazing solo presentation of her work. If you did not have an opportunity to see the exhibition yet, the museum will be open after the talk, so please go and enjoy. Her exhibition here at the Wilson Museum, Animal Albums from A to Z, features original artwork from her children's book, Animal Albums, and paraphernalia crafted by Bell for use in music videos created to accompany the book, such as set pieces and costumes. Cece Bell Animal Albums from A to Z and its related programs are sponsored in part by the City of Roanoke through the Roanoke Arts Commission, for which we are very grateful. Cece.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. And a little bit of house cleaning or house cleaning is what I need to do, housekeeping. Just want to thank the museum staff for putting together an incredible exhibit. They did something really neat, which I don't see very often, where they put the artwork down a little bit lower so that kids who want to see the exhibit can really look at the artwork. And they even arranged the artwork like musical notes, which I thought was very clever. So big shout out to them because it's a really nice exhibit. But a little bit more housekeeping. We would not be in this room together if it weren't for 2 very lovely people, my mom and dad, who are here. And this is pretty cool. About 65 years ago, on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, mom and dad were, my thing, it's not working. Mom and dad were, what were they doing? What were they doing?
I just hit that. Is the
okay, thank you. Okay, here's what mom and dad were doing. Mom and dad were getting married. And this is a church in Catawba where mom grew up, and you can see her in her lovely dress. And then there's mom and dad with the cake. And mom and dad kissing, mom and dad. And so on Wednesday, we went back to the church in Catawba and recreated a lovely moment. So, thanks, mom and dad. Y'all are awesome. And like I said, we would not be here without mom and dad. And that's true of all of us. We wouldn't be here without mom and dad. So back to this book. This book is has been a wonderful and fun project. And the very basis of this, or the basic thing, what this book is, it is a celebration of music from A to Z. And it's also like a celebration of the iconic album cover, album art. But before we talk about this book, we are going to talk just briefly about this book, El Defo, which is an autobiographical graphic novel about my experiences with hearing loss. And it basically talks about my experiences in school, specifically being the only deaf kid in a whole school of hearing kids. And I lost my hearing when I was 4.5 with from an illness. And then the very first year of school, I was in a group with other kids who had hearing loss too. And this was back in 1975 when I lost my hearing, and we were taught, or the thinking then was oralism, which is basically teaching deaf kids to lip read and to speak and to discourage them from using any sign language. So I was one of the lucky deaf kids who could do those things because I had lost my hearing at a time when I already, let me say that differently. I had had 4.5 years of speech, so I understood how speech works. Where another kid who was maybe born deaf or lost their hearing when they were 1 or 2 didn't have that advantage. So lucky in a way. But anyway, one of the questions that a lot of kids ask me is, are you still deaf? Are you still deaf? And the answer to that is yes. And I still wear hearing aids, one in this ear and one in that ear, and I still prefer lip reading as my communication. And a big part of the book was talking about a specific hearing aid that I used in school called the phonic ear, and it was this big bulky thing. There was a picture of me from that El Defo period, and you can see the strap and the cords going up to the ears, and so and a look of fierce determination. I'll show you people, which is still kind of my attitude today. So El Defo was about this kid right there, and that big bulky hearing aid, and just navigating life and trying to make friends, and being able to hear the teacher in the bathroom because that hearing aid was hooked up to a microphone that my teacher used, and so wherever she went in the whole school, I could hear it. So it was pretty awesome. So that was this kid, and the book did really, really well. The book did better than I could have ever imagined. And so there was a lot of, well, are you going to write El Defo 2? Where is El Defo 2? When is that coming? And El Defo was written, well, it came out rather 11 years ago. So there has been no El Defo 2. But I'm going to argue that in some ways, Animal Albums from A to Z is El Defo 2. And I will explain that in this presentation today. So this is a little scene from El Defo, and it's on the very first page. And Yellow Submarine is the last song that I heard with ears that worked. So what a great song to go out on, right? If you could pick any song that would be the last song you ever really heard the right way, that would be a good one. So Yellow Submarine, and then by the end of this page, I think I'm throwing up and I'm sick. So the end of that. But during that El Defo period, I did get hearing aids, and one of the things I love to do more than anything that did not require any ability to hear was draw. And the Ed Emberley drawing books were game changers for me. And I'll talk a little bit about them later, but they're very much, all you have to do is draw these shapes in this order, and boom, you have an animal, all different kinds of animals. So I spent a lot of time with this book, And I actually did continue to listen to music, even after I got my hearing aids, because hearing aids work. And one of the big misconceptions about people with hearing loss is that we can't hear music, or that we can't appreciate music, or that we aren't musical because we can't hear. But the truth is, deafness, like any disability, is on a spectrum. And I'm on a spectrum where I can put hearing aids in my ears and hear, and it's not perfect, but it's relative. You know, I can tell who's singing. Is that Paul McCartney? Great, yay! Is that Bob Dylan? Boo! You know, I can tell. And so, anyway, I kept loving music, and I will also argue that I think even if you have never heard music, or I think you're always going to feel music because of vibrations, but I think humans are inherently musical people. I think it's in your soul to be musical. So anyway, Bunny Hop was one of my all-time favorite records. Very soon after I lost my hearing and got my hearing aids, and my sister and I shared a room, and we had twin beds and a little portable record player in between our beds, and Bunny Hop. And Bunny Hop also had Apple on a Stick, A+, and Mexican Hat Dance. So these are, I love this record so much. So what's next? So that's what I look like as El Defo, essentially. But if I had ended up doing El Defo 2, we would be talking about this kid. So this is me in about the 6th or 7th grade. And as you can see, I have really cool glasses. And I thought I looked like John Lennon. And so cool. And what else can I say about this? Oh, big change. So you'll notice in this picture, I have those cords and the straps. In this picture, they're gone because the phonic ear had changed. That big school hearing aid had changed, and now it was much simpler and smaller, and it involved just a little box that I wore in my belt and a noose, a noose that I wore around my neck, and I don't know how it worked, but it worked, and it sort of connected between the noose part and the behind the ear hearing aids that I wear. And so things were, I didn't feel as self-conscious because people couldn't really see that. So much of El Defo was about hiding who I was, you know, trying not to share that part of me. And so I was definitely self-conscious in middle school. So anyway, the book I was obsessed with after Ed Emberley was this book, Gnomes. And if you don't know this book, go and get yourself one on Amazon right away, because it is an amazing book. And I'll talk a little bit more about that book too. But I just want to give you a sense of what this kid was interested in. Gnomes, and then there's me and my family. That's mom and dad and my older brother, Ashley, my older brother's sister, Sarah, my older sister, Sarah, and me. And one of the advantages of being the youngest in the family is that there are a lot of records lying around, and a lot of different musical tastes at play. So I'm looking at Gnomes, and I'm also looking around in my parents' living room and my brother's room and my sister's room, and I'm listening to all kinds of albums that are more advanced than Bunny Hop and Mexican Hat Dance and Apple on a Stick. So I'm going to show you some of the album covers and musical things that were interesting to me back then. This was my brother's Beatles album and Sgt. Pepper's, and this was maybe my very, very favorite album because it had lyrics on the back. And not very many album covers have lyrics on the back. But with lyrics, that meant that I could look at my gnomes book and I could look at the back of this cover and follow the songs and learn the words, because as a lip reader, I have no idea what people are singing at all. I mean, I can tell that a person is singing. I can tell Paul McCartney is singing or John Lennon, but I don't know what they're saying unless I have the words. But he had a lot of neat albums. He had Aztec Camera. Oh, yeah. He had Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66. He liked vintage 60s stuff. This is a great album. Oh my gosh. He had this beautiful Simon and Garfunkel. So he kind of went back and forth from newer stuff. This would have been like 82, 81, and older stuff. And then my sister in her bedroom, she had the Moody Blues. This is a really neat album with beautiful artwork. And Miles of Ours and Joni Mitchell. She had the Carpenters. Don't get me started. And then, meanwhile, for whatever reason, this was my very favorite Christmas album. And even when it wasn't Christmas, some days when I was having a hard day at school, I would pull out, it might be, May or April, and I'll pull out my Christmas with the 50 guitars. It just, they have this version of, I think it was Jingle Bell Rock, that will just melt your heart. And then my mom's albums were John Denver, and Helen Reddy. Yeah. And then both parents loved this album, Bobby Gentry. And then my dad had James Galway and Sweet Emma and her Preservation Hall Band. And he also loved Wynton Marsalis. So, but then meanwhile, I was forming my own musical taste. And this is what I bought. This is the very first album I ever bought with my own money, Culture Club. And I love Culture Club, but I love the Police. I love this album. But I also really, 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 really like the piano. And I like Dave Brubeck. And I love Thelonious Monk. I really like piano jazz. And so I sort of discovered these on my own. And then there were the albums that were sort of zeitgeist. This is what was going on in the 80s. Michael Jackson's Thriller and Purple Rain. And a big reason why I knew about these albums was because of MTV, which was a total game changer for me. It was 1981, and I was 10, 11, and MTV showed up. And before MTV, the way all the kids experienced music was through the radio. And the radio just didn't cut it for me. The radio was just, it just wasn't enough. And then the DJ would come on and blah, 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 blah. And then I was always reminded that I couldn't understand people without faces. And then the music would come on but with MTV, there were visuals and the little thing in the lower left-hand corner that told you who it was and what the song was. And sometimes you could even lip read the musician. And the videos were interesting. And they also gave me a way to talk about music with my friends. Like, gee, did you see Prince? Did you see how his pants didn't have, cut out holes in the back of his pants? Wow, not Prince, no. So MTV, and we have my mother to thank for MTV, because back then you had to go to the Salem Civic Center and get this special little cable box and smack it on your TV, and then you would have MTV. So I remember coming home and saying, Mom, this kid told me there's this thing called MTV. And so she went and got me one. And then I was hooked and sitting in front of that screen for hours, watching videos. Those were the days. So now we can kind of switch gears a little bit. And so MTV made me excited to see musicians performing. And I was like, I want to do that too. I want to be a musician. And so in the 6th grade, Dennis Reeser, who was the band director at Andrew Lewis and Salem High School from about 1969 to 2000, I think, 2001, he came to G.W. Carver Elementary School, which was where I was in the 6th grade, with the Andrew Lewis band, the middle school band, and they put on a little show and they were sort of recruiting people. And I saw the band for the first time, and I saw the flute players, and I got very excited about the flute. So I came home after that assembly and asked my parents if I could have flute lessons and a flute, and they said yes. So I learned how to play the flute and then ended up being in the band at school at Lewis. And so I can't say enough about this fella because, I mean, he was just a remarkable human being and hilarious, funniest person you ever met, said things in school that no teacher should ever say. The jokes, I mean, oh my gosh, but he was this close to being a cult leader, you know. I mean, I love him, but it's true. And anyway, if you look carefully in that picture, this picture was taken when I was in high school. You can see he's got this little thing clipped on him and a little cord going down to a box. That was the microphone that my teachers were wearing at that time. So I love this picture because it shows that I was there when it was taken. Anyway, so he comes along and I joined the concert band at Lewis. And it was a requirement that if you wanted to continue being in the concert band, then you had to join the marching band. And so the year before I joined, I was aware that the drum major of the band looked like this. And this is Cindy Robinette. And she got to wear this beautiful rainbow outfit with a white skirt. And so I thought to myself, if I join the marching band, I'm going to look just like that. I'm going to look like Cindy Robinette. And so I'm all in, I'm joining the band. And I put my band uniform on. And you know what? I looked exactly like Cindy Robinette. Yeah, in the Salem High School, beautiful band picture. But I stayed in the band and I was in the marching band. There I am from 8th grade to 12th grade. And I switched instruments. I switched to saxophone and was also in the jazz band in 11th and 12th. So there's me and all my friends. So the band was an amazing experience for me. It taught me about music, of course, but it also taught me about collaborating. And Dennis Reeser was a very loving but very strict band director who taught us a lot more than just about music. He really was something. So anyway, I was in the band. So now we're going to flash forward to many, 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 many years later. And by the time this book came out, I had gone to college, I'd gotten married. What else had I done? I went to graduate school. All kinds of stuff. And I had written lots of different picture books and other kinds of books and illustrated them. And then I did this book and it was like lightning in a bottle. Like I said, it was very successful. And it was, the success was wonderful, but it was also very daunting because there did feel like new pressure. Where's El Defo 2? Where is that second book? Or we want something as good as this or as impactful. And I'm an introvert. And so all of that was really overwhelming. So I sort of decided to take a sabbatical. I gave myself some time off and wish I didn't sign any more book contracts. No book contracts for a year. And I didn't even put pressure on myself to come up with ideas. All I had to do was go over to my studio every day and work and play. Not really work, play. Play with materials, try out new things. And so what I did during this time, or one of the many things I did, was I decided to look at old album covers that we had lying around and try to replicate them as collages, if that makes sense, like collages and, paint and whatever. So this was one. This, in fact, is the wife of Andy Williams. You guys remember Andy Williams? Ex-wife of Andy Williams, who probably after this album cover was created, was out skiing and shot somebody in real life. Wow, Claudine. She looked so pure and innocent, and she killed somebody. Anyway, so that's the album cover in real life, and that's what I came up with. So before, and then this is another beautiful album cover. My husband Tom, who's also a writer and illustrator, we both really like album covers. Just we don't even listen to them. We just buy the album cover. So there's that, and there's Myron. And another one. This was actually from my mom and dad's collection, Bobby Gentry and Glenn Campbell. And one of the things to note is how terribly designed it is, the way it's got that split right down the middle, which is a big design no-no, really. And then putting the yellow text across that. And I know one of my design graduate student friends is here, right? Lisa, that's terrible, right? Terrible. So anyway, but I still wanted to see what I could do with it. And so that's what that ended up being. And it helped me see how terrible that design was. So, and then finally, another Sergio Mendez, and that's what I came up with for that. So I had all this. I loved doing these, and I wanted to turn this into a book, this concept. But everybody I talked to about it said, that's nice, but it's not going to work as a picture book. So I sort of forgot it. And then the sabbatical ended, and it was time for me to get back to work. And I knew that I wanted to make an alphabet book, but I didn't know what that book would be. So what I was just reaching for anything, and at one point it was going to be things I like from A to Z, which I like a lot of things, so things I like. And so one day I was struggling with things I like, and I started drawing boxes, thinking that I would, like maybe this was the page for A, and in each box there would be, an apple, and then in another box there would be an armadillo, and another box, just a way to organize it. And I'm drawing these boxes, and then I was like, wait a minute, squares. What's a square? An album cover. And suddenly everything came together, and I remembered those things that I was doing on my sabbatical, and then I thought, I can make up my own album covers, and they can be alphabetical, and they can be organized by the type of music and by the type of animal playing that music. And so I got very excited and remembered Ed Emberley all over again. And this is kind of how he teaches you. It's all shape-based. And I thought, well, I'm going to remember all of the tools that Ed Emberley gave me and make these very shape-based animals. And this is like an early sketch for one of the album covers. So as you can see, it's very shape-based. It's very simple. It's extremely simple. But then I make it fancy and just, you know, play around with painted papers and stencils. More painted papers, start building this thing and put all these little details in there to make it seem like a real album cover. Another stencil getting made. And that all together. A label. Every album has a different label. And so ending up with a unique album cover that looks real and looks vintage. So basically that's what the book became, is made up album covers from A to Z. And they have animals from A to Z, the genre of music is from A to Z, and then I made up all these song titles that are very alliterative, that kind of thing. So I'll show you a few of those. Yeah, maybe the beagle and a bat, and blame it on the baloney. I mean, I love words. I love words very, very much, and it's very fun to come up with fake song titles. See a classical with a crocodile and a cat and chicken dinner. Chicken dinner. H was hip hop with the hip hop hedgehog. Jazz. If you were paying attention and you saw the Dave Brubeck album cover, this was me ripping off Dave Brubeck, because that sort of background is very much like that album. S is the Soft Boys, kind of like the Beach Boys. And all the way to Z, Zydeco Zebras. So, what happened next is normally, when I work on a book, I do all the writing first, and I make sure that the writing is as perfect as it's going to be before I start the art. But with this project, I started with the art first, and I had no idea what the writing would be. I needed some kind of writing to bring it all together, because all I had were, these are fun album covers, ta-da, and that was it. So I had to figure out, what is the thing that brings everything together? So I started thinking about gnomes again. So as you see, I thought about Ed Emberley again with the art, but then gnomes was important because the great thing about this book is the way the gnomes are presented with this extraordinary artwork. If you're a kid looking at this book, which I was, you start to believe that the gnomes are real. They are 100% real, because how could anybody have painted these gnomes without reference, actual gnomes in front of them, you know? And then, wow, they live in the same places that we do, and look at their homes. So all these loving details convinced me when I was 12 or so that gnomes were real, and if I just paid attention, I would find them. So that became what bound this book together, is essentially me lying to children and trying to tell them that these records are 100% real. And so I'm going to read you a little bit of the introduction just to give you a sense of that. So, I love finding and acquiring old albums, especially those created by animal musicians. The animal albums in my treasured collection reflect the visionary work of several small human-run recording studios whose mission was to elevate and promote musical talents of all kinds. From the 1940s to the 1980s, these albums provided somewhat popular and profitable, with the animal musicians themselves experiencing varying degrees of success. Although many animal albums were made during the heyday of recorded animal music, today they are hard to find. I search for them in the record stacks at thrift stores and antique malls, and when I'm lucky, I'll spot one with a quirky and eye-catching album cover and grab it up. If I'm really lucky, that album will include song lyrics on the back. These are especially a treat, as I don't hear very well. I thought that was funny. And seldom understand what the animals are singing. But I can tell you that the music on these albums is surprisingly good. And then finally, recently, as I was admiring my rich assortment of albums and organizing them alphabetically, a marvelous idea occurred to me. Why not share the visual beauty of some of this cherished collection with you? So that's my lie. And I liked imagining myself, pawing through the thrift stores and making kids think, if I just looked hard enough, I'll find one of these too. I'll find a gnome. So that became the general thing. And then I needed more than that. And not yet. It's trying to sell that idea, trying to sell the idea that the musicians were real, that animals really made music. I decided to also make fake memorabilia, as if I were a collector of anything I could find about these animal musicians. So I ended up making this fake memorabilia, and so I'll show you some of the inspiration behind some of it. So there's a TV guide, and we have TV time. So that's the same armadillo from the letter A, and it's like a magazine. The nose flute. That's the real nose flute, and that's the fake one. And all of these are on display in the exhibit. With embroidered patch, and this is the one for the letter Y. And then, those classic concert posters. And that became that. So that all got smushed together and is part of the end papers of the book, this part here. And that also kind of helps sell the idea that they're real. They're all part of the lie. Furthering that lie, I then decided, well, this is, these are songs. So I decided for each album cover to pull out a song title. And in this case, it is My Aromatic Armpit is Astonishing to All. And just come up with lyrics. And in the book, they are basically poems. So if a parent wanted to read this book to their kids, they'd be reading poems. But then I thought, this is a book about music. And why is there no music? That's where the band comes in. Band is back into this. And I did not grow up to become a professional musician, sadly, but I wanted to. But I ended up with a lot of friends who did grow up to be professional musicians, and they helped me put together a lot of the music. And they were also connected to other musicians, and I had made other friends along the way too, who are musicians and helped with the book. But just to show you some of the people, that's me on the far right circle with the flute. And then there's Edgar Crockett, and then Melody Vernon Irby and Christy Vernon, they're in there. There was Melody, she was a huge part of the music making. And then there's me on the right, and on the left is Cyrus Pace, in case you all know him from the Jefferson Center, and he also helped make the music. And then a huge part of making the music too is my good friend Sarah Reeser O'Brien on the left, who is the daughter of Dennis Reeser, my band director. And so she helped put a lot of the music together, and plus all these other people. And I just started asking people, you know, hey, I'm doing this book. You want to write some music? And here are the lyrics, blah, blah, blah. And initially I was only going to do 5 songs, but it just kind of got to this feeling of, you know, wouldn't it be neat to have all 26? And that's what we did. We made all 26 songs, and a large part of the success of making the songs happen was the fellow on the right, who is Will O'Brien, Sarah's son, and Dennis Reeser's grandson. So he recorded many of the songs in his studio, and then he also did something called mastering, you know, making all the songs fit together as a whole. And so it really felt like this amazing full circle moment of making the music this way. So we have some exciting things coming. So what I'm going to share with you now is a little bit of the music making process. So we have the song, Bud believes in Betty, but Betty believes in Brad. It's a love song, and by the Barbershop Beagle. And what I'm going to do is, first, I'm going to share with you sound recording. What I would do is I would come up with these lyrics, but when I wrote the lyrics or wrote the poem, I was trying to think musically. It wasn't like I'm just going to write a poem. It was, I want to make sure that this has some kind of a cadence to it that is musical. And so I was often singing the song already to myself. So for almost every song, I would make a little recording in my phone. And I'm a terrible singer, so forgive me for what you're about to hear. But it's me singing, and then I would send that recording to a musician. So first off, I'm going to escape. I'm going to escape. Can I escape? Ah, okay. And this is me singing a little bit of Bud Believes in Betty. Okay. If it works. Okay. You know, yeah. The chicken fried steak that Betty made was the best Bud ever had. The problem was that chicken fried steak was really so bad. And when Bud realized his mistake, and that the steak weren't his, he shed a tear and said, "Oh dear, my heart had lost its fear. Oh, Bud believes in Betty, but Betty believes in Brad." Okay, so that's me. Okay, and then let's see if I've got to learn. Okay, so then what I did next was I sent that amazing recording. I noticed there wasn't any applause. I sent it to Sarah Reeser O'Brien, Dennis Reeser's daughter, and she sent me back sheet music. Look, I mean, sheet music. I mean, blew my mind. She sent me sheet music, but she also sent me this. Okay.
The chicken fried steak that Betty made was the best Bud ever had. The chicken fried steak was really meant for Brad. And we thought real his mistake and that mistake was his. We shed a tear and said, "Oh dear, my heart is oh, Brad."
Wow, right? Okay. Okay. Wow. So she comes back with that, right? And I'm just, anytime I got a song from anybody, like, it was really, really neat. So then what did she do? She sent me that. I said, yes, please. And then she then split up what she was singing into 4 parts, 4 parts. And that was exciting. So what we're doing next is I'm going to, oh, I didn't need to do that. Hold on. Okay. What I'm going to put this up so that you can see the lyrics. But we, in our audience today, we have the Barbershop Eagles, and they are going to sing for you the most haunting love song. Give it up for the Barbershop Eagles. And this is Sarah.
The chicken fried steak that Betty made was the best I'd ever had. The problem was that chicken fried steak was really meant for fried. And when Bob realized his mistake and that the steak weren't his, he shed a tear and said, "Oh dear, my heart has lost its bliss." Oh, Bert believes in Betty, but Betty believes in Brad. Love, it is a fickle thing, and it can make you sad. But how does one ever find true love when the one you love loves another? Until then, you'll have to grin and hope your heart recovers. The county fair where Betty danced was Twinkle saw her best. But Betty danced with handsome Brad, poor Bud again felt vexed. He realized that he'd never have to handle Betty Lou. He shed a tear and said, "Oh dear, she broke my heart in two." Oh, Lord believes in Betty, and Betty believes in Brad. Love, it is a fickle thing, and it can make you sad. But how does one never find true love when the one you love loves another? Until then, you'll have to grin and hope your heart recovers. The big brass band that played that night had a lady on trombone. Her purple gown was out of sight, she sang in baritone. And when Bud saw her pucker her lips to play her horn, he shed a tear and said, "Oh dear, my honey, ring." Now Bud believes in Barbara Sue, and Betty believes in Brad. Love, it is a fickle thing, and it can make you glad. Remember, Bud, when you feel like crying and you think your heart might break, don't lose hope, just try to cope with a bit of chicken steak.
That was beautiful, beautiful. So thank you, Barbershop Beagles and that. So I got to do this not just once, but 25 times with 25 different songs. And the title page of the book has a QR code that kids can scan or their parents can scan. And then that takes you to a website where you can listen to all of the different songs. And in the exhibit, it turns out they've got QR codes so that you can listen to each song with each album, which is amazing, amazing. But the music is also available on like Amazon and Spotify and that sort of thing. So there was one last thing of this is that the music was amazing to make, and I kind of went back to, what about MTV? You know, this project just grew and grew and grew. So I made the 26 songs and then felt like I needed to have some MTV style music videos. And they are also on display in the museum. But real quick, so far, I've only made 5 music videos because they're a lot of work. But I'm hoping, I have this lifetime goal now, that by the time I'm 80, I've got like 80 years old, I will have made all 26 music videos. But this is sort of, you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. This is the old MTV introduction from 1981. And so you remember that. And so I decided I need to have something like that to introduce all of these music videos. And when you look at the stuff that kind of going into all the letters, like in the MTV thing, logo, those are like photos of the process of making the book, bits and pieces of that. So, woo! Oh, yeah, I love that. All right. And so finally, I'm bringing all of this to a close. Probably all of you are tired. I wanted to show in this presentation that lots of things from your childhood end up creeping into the things that you make. And in my case, it was Ed Emberley and shape-based drawing, and then the bunny hop and love of music that I had as a kid and still have now. Gnomes, the Beatles, MTV, and Dennis Reeser, of course. And so in a lot of ways, Animal Album is a book for this kid, about this kid, and about maybe the important thing, the reason that this book could be called El Defo 2 is because with this book, I was trying to, in a subtle way, not in a preachy way, but in a subtle way, kind of remind people that not to make assumptions about what people with disabilities are capable of or what they enjoy. So by making a book about music, I was saying, I'm a deaf person, yes, but I'm also a person who really, really, really loves music, the visual aspects, but even the sound aspects too. So in a weird way, this book really kind of is El Defo 2 in a very strange way. So that is my presentation. Can we give another round of applause for the Beagles? Amazing. And all 4 or all 5 of them are pillars of the community. I mean, pillars. And, you know, if I had another hour, I would go through all of their accolades because they are all remarkable humans. So I really appreciate them being here tonight. So that's my presentation. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Please put them in the comment box on your way out. I'm happy to answer questions, and I might, probably what'll happen is Laura is going to come up and she will repeat questions since a lot of you are far away and I need to see your mouths. So does anybody have a question or thought? Okay.
Would you ever consider putting these songs in like those singles records or printing them on a record?
Would you ever consider putting any of these songs on like a singles record or putting them on a record?
I forgot to tell you all about that. So yeah, I had a limited run of these made, sort of more as promotional and, gag gifts. But albums are here, and it's actually a double album because there's too many songs. So but I had this made. I just went online and paid the money, and if you pay people money, they'll make you things. Anyway, I do have a few of these left, and so every now and then I go on Instagram and there's a giveaway. So become my follower. There's a few, but yeah, and that's really cool. And they sound different because it's vinyl, and it has that vinyl sound that cannot be replicated. Yeah, even with these hearing aids, I can tell the difference between that richer, warmer analog sound and digital. It's very interesting. Good question. Good question. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
So you said on your sabbatical that you played. Can you speak more to the importance of play for you?
You said in your sabbatical that you played. Can you speak more about the importance of play to you?
Play. 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 The truth of the matter is, and I think I'm a very wound tight, anxious person, and this stuff is like medicine. Making things is the thing that the mental health. Everybody's talking about mental health right now, and with good reason. But I have found that making things is probably the way out of, because you get into that flow state or that zone and you're not thinking about anything else. And play is part of that. When we were kids, you could play for hours. Let's pretend that you're Winnie the Pooh and I'm whoever. Piglet. I'm always Piglet. But play, and sometimes with work, I'm not playing, and you know that as the esteemed illustrator you are, that, you get really tight and and the sabbatical that I did was sort of forced play. Like, get out of all this trying to make money from your work, just play. And it's really important to play and loosen up, because when you do that play and the loosening up, that's when you get your best ideas, or you get your, this and this solves that problem or whatever. Like those boxes that I made, that was me being tight. But if I hadn't drawn those boxes and played around with it, I wouldn't have come up with this. But this project, more than any of my other projects, was definitely the most fun and the most playful that I ever have gotten with a book. And I think it was just because partly when I was by myself, I was having fun, but then when I started collaborating with the musicians, it turned into everybody having fun and everybody playing. And, there's a lot of energy that you get from that just propels you forward and at least fixes your brain. That doesn't really answer your question, but it's just really making things as play, and so I think everybody should be making something. And as we start looking at all this, this is me on my soapbox on the I hate it so much I've forgotten what it's called. Artificial intelligence, AI. I hate it. Parts of it I love, because AI allows me to make phone calls and transcribe text, A+. But when it's trying to take away the livelihood of people who are trying to make things, or just making it so easy to make things, it should be a little bit hard to make things, because that's part of the pleasure is you made it, and anyway, blah, blah, blah. More questions. Yeah.
Was the music part of the contract for the project overall with your publisher, or was it something you did on the side on your own?
I got some of that with music.
Was the music part of the contract that you made with your publisher? Or
Mm,
was it just part of the project on its own?
Great, great question. My publisher was not on board with the music. So it was completely funded by moi. And it got a little daunting because I wanted to pay everybody. I mean, I did not pay the composers what they were worth, and that was really hard for me. It's like, this isn't and then I was also paying performers. And if I haven't paid any of you at any time, see me after the show. No, Michael's about to say something. He wants more money. Yeah, but,
You paid
and I know that pace.
you paid us more than we need for
No, but, so there were points along the way where, anytime Tom is more prolific than me, my husband, anytime he sold a book, I was thinking, oh, good. Money in my pocket. He was very, very nice about that part of it. But, at one point, and this is how I knew I married the right person. I was like, Tom, I'm spending so much money on this project. And he said, no, this is like a once in a lifetime. This is something that you need in your life. I did this, and that's worth everything. So, but yeah, it was like, money. And the publisher, after the music was made, was very excited about the music. But I mean, I had to come up with contracts, and I had these spreadsheets like you wouldn't believe, trying to keep it all straight and keep it together. And we made 26 songs in about 9 months. I mean, it was a remarkable process with a lot of remarkable people. But the publisher loved it. Anyway, okay.
When did you make the decision to use collage?
When did you make the decision to use collage?
Oh, okay, that is a good question. I frustrate myself as an illustrator because I get too tight for one thing, and then paint and paintbrushes aren't really my friends sometimes. And there's something about cutting out paper, painting the paper first and cutting it out, and I just ended up with more interesting surfaces and more interesting, and it was more playful putting it together that way. And then you'll probably notice from the artwork that the text even is either cut out or painted, or, I mean, nothing is digital. This was the anti-AI project.
Mhm.
Nothing is digital. I think I just wanted to keep it as vintage and analog as record covers themselves felt. And doing collage just felt like the right way to do it, and a livelier way of doing it. Yeah.
What would you, like, what advice would you give to someone who wants to make a career out of creating their own work?
What advice would you give someone who is thinking of making a career out of creating their own work?
Out of creating their own work? Good question. You're amazing. How can you do that? I mean, you're so far away. Oh gosh, advice. I don't know. I think try to do the project that you're excited about, if you can, if you have that luxury, I mean, in the early days, you always have to take on projects that are freelance projects that maybe you don't necessarily want to do. One of my favorite jobs was making casino trips. But I mean, I actually liked that, but it wasn't what my heart was set on, I think just my advice would be just to go for the projects that you're going to love and that you're going to feel like you can give 100% to. And I mean, that's the main one, because when you start to get when you end up doing a lot of projects that you don't care about, it's just deadening, and it's just, And if you can do the things that you really love, your work will get better faster because you're going to want to spend 18 hours a day on it as opposed to 2, You won't be looking at YouTube videos, but I'm really glad that I did not come up in the AI period because that just seems so daunting and it still is. So, you can fight that by not using anything digital, making everything by hand. And that will also make you a better illustrator in a lot of ways. Yeah. Questions? Yes.
I've got a question about audience. Now that the book has been out for a year, an alphabet book, you think of children, but it seems like this would appeal so much to the adults as far as buying the book. I'm just curious, in the last year, who's buying the book?
Who's buying the book? Oh, that is a great question. That is a very good question. Who's buying the book and who's the audience? And when I pitched this project to my editor, she said, ooh, nobody knows what a record is anymore. Kids don't know, they don't care. And she was a really tough sell. And the way I sold her on the idea was, well, when you go to Amazon or Spotify and you want to listen to Taylor Swift is still in a square. The iconography of music is still a square even now, even though maybe the album cover is simpler because it's little and they can't have all this stuff on there. It's still a square. So that basically sold the idea. And then, but the audience feels like what I'm hearing is that kids really do like it because there is plenty of stuff to look at. That was a big, you point, this cover alone, find the elephant, find the lion, and there's so many things to look at, and there's so much wordplay, and parents are reading their poems, basically. And the fact that there's music has been a big thing. But I think the audience, and this is fine, and this is how children's book illustrators and writers make a living, is by appealing to the people who are buying the book. And so parents and grandparents, they're the people buying the books. And so when you can make something that they're interested in, as much as the kids might be, but I really like the idea of parents and grandparents looking at the book and then explaining, oh, you've never seen a record. I'll get the records out. We'll get the records out. And when I do school visits, I always ask, how many kids know what a record is? And I would say maybe 25%. Or how many of you have a record player? 10%. And so I get to, whip out a record, and I have a little portable record player, and I put that needle down and their minds are blown. So it's really nice connecting kids with that. But I will also say that I have a son who is now almost 20, and his life revolves around vinyl records. And there's this generation, the Zoomers, they're really interested in the analog stuff because their lives have been taken over by technology. And this is technology too, but it's a simpler, warmer technology of yesteryear. Woohoo. So I have a lot of faith in these next generations because, they dig it too. It's really cool. So that's a great question. Yeah.
Has it been selling well?
Has it been selling well? Has it been selling well? It has been selling very well. So that's good. And that's because people are just really interested in albums anyway. It ended up on a lot of end of the year lists, like, best of the year. And if you can end up on one of those lists, that's a really good thing. And one of the greatest things about being on that list was it starts with an A, So it's always the first thing on the list. So it seems like maybe it's the best thing on the list, not necessarily. So that's good. I normally don't like to, toot my own horn, like music pun there, but, I've always felt like I wasn't the strongest illustrator in the world, a little bit ham-fisted, so I ended up on a list of the New York Times top 10 illustrating books, and that's a prize that is selected by other illustrators, which is so I felt like, okay, finally, I'm on a list that I want that illustration list, bingo. So that was a good one, yeah. So that helps the sale. That helps the sale. Yeah. I was looking at you when I was looking at you. Yeah. Does anybody else have a question or a thought? I think this is good. You have been a wonderful crowd, and we have a reception, and you can go and you can check out the show. And thank you so very much for being with us.